I know the episodes have the little blurb under the streaming option when you were about to select it. But, Clay, did you have any thoughts that this might be the first appearance of the Borg in Star Trek Voyager with a title like Resistance?
I did. I thought it was either going to be the Borg or it was going to be about Keith Olbermann's tweeting habits for the last 4 years.
Hashtag. There's no hashtag on this one. No emoji after it. No gun emoji or anything. Yeah, it's not the first Resistance, or it's not the first Borg episode, unfortunately, of Voyager, or fortunately, or unfortunately, however you want to look at it. But it's in the title. It's the piece de resistance. This one is Resistance. It's the 12th episode of the second season of Star Trek Voyager. It came out on November 27th, 1995. Teleplay goes to Lisa Klink. Story credit goes to Michael Jan Friedman and Kevin J. Ryan. Directed by Weinrich Colby, in universe date not really known, but it's 2372. In this one, called Resistance, in order to free her imprisoned crew members, Captain Janeway accepts the help of a delusional resistance fighter. So here we go with Resistance. Clay, this is the best character work episode of the show so far. True or untrue?
Yeah, I would say, well,
and it's for a guest actor. It's not for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, he was fantastic. He was great. Great character. I don't know if the rest of the episode was necessarily worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Joel Grey is always fantastic. It's tough to go wrong with him.
I don't recognize him. Should I recognize him?
He is most famously known as the guy who played he was in Cabaret.
Okay.
The film version of Cabaret. He's the MC of the show that does Welcome and Bienvenue. Welcome, that song. I think he won an Oscar for that, actually.
Oh.
And so he's just like he's an actor who's just been out there for years and years and always does really great work. He was on Buffy briefly as a I think popped up a couple times in a recurring role, but
okay.
Yeah, I can't really point to anything else I know him from other than Cabaret.
Okay,
that's like the big thing. But he's a very good actor.
Yeah, he's excellent, and I think to start this one off, I think this was a ray of sunshine in Voyager season 2. I think this episode, I think this is comfortably in my top couple of Voyager episodes so far. I think I thought that this one. I don't know. This one to me felt really different from all the previous Voyager episodes. It felt like the script came at it from a different angle, which was that it puts you in this small story within a larger story, but it doesn't feel the need to flesh out the larger story at all, which I thought was refreshing. Like, we don't learn about the Mokra ethos. Like, we don't spend time talking to them. We don't get the whole let's go down to the planet in the cold open thing where they waste 15 minutes getting us down there before we meet the guys, or like before Janeway gets knocked out and Tuvok and Torres get captured and stuff like that. It puts you right into it, introduces a great character and an actor, gives Janeway something to do. I think it has these sort of weird tangential problems. Like, it almost has script elements that were originally in it and they cut it out, but they didn't cut it out enough to not totally be there. So it feels weird that they're still in the script in some ways. But I thought that, I just thought that the essential, like, emotional core of this one was really different from any Voyager episode before it, in that I felt something for the characters. I thought that there was like a genuine sadness and pathos to everything. I thought that the fact that they didn't go super deep in how much of an authoritarian nightmare this is and what the rules of this are, that you were allowed just to really float with this very basic idea of what this guy did and his regrets and the things that he's trying to make up for over the course of the rest of his life was like very easy to understand and not confusing, and it wasn't compromised by other things that were going on.
Sure.
I thought it was all really good. I think that the ending is incredibly sloppy, but outside of that, I think that this central character, this guest actor, was probably one of my favorite things about the show so far. I thought that he was really good, if somewhat derivative of maybe other Star Trek that's come before it, but I thought the actor put enough of a unique spin on it, and the script was unique enough that I really liked it.
Yeah, I wasn't super crazy about it. it felt a lot like a proto-Enterprise episode to me.
It does. It has
Yeah, it has
being
a lot of the
captured by
same,
a generic authoritarian nightmare planet.
Yeah, I agree that he's really great.
Enterprise never had an episode that connected like this, though, did it? Like, was there an Enterprise episode where you actually felt bad for the people on that planet who are under this regime? I don't remember any anyway.
I don't know. Yeah, I can't remember.
I think that answers itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just didn't like. I thought his story was fine, but it I don't know. It didn't really hit me that hard, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think because like I didn't really I didn't feel like it was affecting Janeway that much until the end. And so he was really good, but I wasn't really interested too much in what was going on, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like Janeway was being affected or changing really anything that she was doing, and you know, I don't need the.
I mean, she has to lie. She has to lie to this guy, right, to get his help. Like, she has to sort of use him, which is her decision.
Yeah, that's true. And like, I guess I didn't need them to flesh out more of the
Mokra.
Yeah, the Mokra, but at the same time, it was like, I don't know. It wasn't. They weren't particularly interesting because
the Mokra was underbaked. Mokra could have had more time in the oven.
Yeah, like there wasn't anything really interesting going on there aside from their authoritarian government that was putting people in jail, and this guy's wife and daughter had been killed and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
My favorite part of the episode was actually the scene with Torres and Tuvok after Tuvok gets tortured.
Yeah, that's my that's that segment that I'm like, Torres and Tuvok don't really need to be in this one, but their scenes are interesting. They could support it the whole episode based on what those two are talking about in this episode, even though it doesn't amount to much here.
Yeah, and I think there is a thematic tie-in you probably could have done with what Tuvok says and the discussion they have about pain.
Yeah, forms of resistance and stuff like that.
Yeah, to tying that into how this guy has been living his life and stuff and X, Y, and Z. But it never really quite gets there for me. So yeah, I don't know. It just like I thought the ending's kind of sloppy. A bunch of people meeting in the cave hallway, trying to get out of their
I like
own
when
way.
after the guy gets stabbed, the two guards just back out of the room.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that. It's a very empty prison too, for being the worst prison in the universe. There's like, you can walk around in it and not run into anybody.
Yeah. It's just under that Enterprise prison where they just have like 8 guards working in a prison that's about 200 square yards big.
It's got to run to the outside of it.
But I don't know. It just wasn't really clicking with me. Outside of Joel Gray's performance, and also that alien makeup really creeped me out.
The little nose thing.
Yeah, I found it really disturbing. I'm not really sure why, because it kind of looked like, exposed bone or something, and I don't know. It was.
I find those
very off-putting.
I find those piercings that people get there in real life to be repulsive, and that's what it reminds me of.
I just saw one today. The girl who made my coffee had a piercing through there.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that's a very unappealing piercing to me. Sorry for all you people out there who have that piercing, but whatever it's called, I don't even know what it's called.
You're never getting a date from Wes.
That's right. You can make my coffee, and that's about it. It's just like, I don't know. It just seems like it's the wrong. It just seems like it's an area that's going to get irritated quite frequently. But what do I know?
I feel like it would always be like in my peripheral vision slightly.
Yeah, it'd be like something stuck on the end of your nose. You'd feel like you'd see it, sort of blurry, just existing there. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't have any piercings, so what do I know? That you know of. I liked this one. I thought this was a really good Voyager episode. I thought that this guy's story was really interesting, and the way that Tuvok talks about his pain and the way that this guy experiences pain, I think you're right, is that it's a good thematic connection. Tuvok has the kind of stoic outlook on it. Like he's being interrogated by B'Elanna about it, which is sort of the weird tangentialness of it because she's the fiery one and he's not that way. Unfortunately, I think that subplot just doesn't have anything to do outside of that. Like it doesn't really hit on anything, and I wish that it was more connected because I think that Tuvok's whole outlook there is really interesting, and it's a he's kind of similar to like a, you know, the way that like protesting in like the civil rights movement used to be, which is more of like a bear what they can give you and you'll defeat them through your resistance to that stuff, which I think is more honorable than whatever passes for activism these days. But like it's an interesting idea, and Tuvok's the person who is poised to make that argument for people. But I think that the episode itself does it makes the right decision by focusing on this guest star who I think they just have really effective scenes. I snuck a look at some of the Patreon comments, and they're going to kind of rag on it a little bit, but I liked the scene where he plays the idiot to let that guy get away. The guy who's about to get arrested for whatever reason because the police are there for him. And he's lived this life of resistance in the way that Tuvok has said, but he's never been able to, he can't turn off the pain the way that Tuvok is able to, and he's not able to escape his delusions about what happened to his wife. I thought his story about his wife, like he didn't get there in time for her and stuff. I found that like heartbreaking. I found his daughter's story, like his daughter tried to break in and rescue her mother, and she got killed by these guys, and he just he can't accept any of this, or if he did accept it at some point, his mind is now broken and he can't do it. And I find like, I guess just to push back, Janeway's entire thing here is a debasement of him by lying to him about what reality is, really. But it's interesting because as someone who's had a grandparent who went through like dementia, you enter this point of like, is Janeway even able to convince this guy of anything at this point? So I like that stuff. I thought this episode was subtle in a way that a lot of Voyager has not been to this point.
Yeah, I liked all the stuff with when he tells the story about what happened to his wife, where he essentially was branded as a coward because he didn't get there in time, or he chose not to go. I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, I mean that's gonna, having that moment be the thing that kind of breaks him makes a lot of sense. And the stuff with all the letters was really affecting too. It's
just not overdone. That's what I like about this stuff.
Right.
It's like it's a believable, simple story that's effective in how few words need to convey what happened to him.
Yeah. I do give it a lot of credit for that, because I do think that his story is pretty interesting. The one thing that was a little bit weird about the scene where he plays the idiot is that later on when they have their confrontation in the cave, the leader knows who this guy is.
Yes.
So ergo, in that scene where he's playing the idiot, this guy knows who this guy is and knows that he's not a psychopath.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, that's the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean.
Well, he knows that. Yeah, he's. I mean,
he knows that he has more faculties than what he's showing in this scene, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe his outward projection is basically what I'm saying is I'm surprised if this guy knows who Joel Grey is, that he didn't assume that he was doing this specifically to buy somebody time.
Yeah. I guess you could look at it both. Like maybe he thinks that he's crazy enough that is the case now, because he does treat him as harmless once he actually breaks into the prison at the end. That's what gets him killed.
That's true. He does. Yes.
Yeah. So I think my problem really with the episode stems mostly from the ending, which feels kind of like an even more half-assed Departed ending in a lot of ways, where it's just like a bunch of people die, but then the guards walk out for no reason. Like everyone's just allowed to leave at that point after the guy has been killed.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty sloppy, although I still think it's mostly fixed by just Janeway continuing her lie at that point by telling this guy that she forgives him for everything before he dies. And the ending where Janeway holds the little necklace is very Inner Lighty reminiscent of that.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, yeah.
And it maybe isn't deserving of quite that, or they should have staged it a little bit more differently, maybe not have her actually like holding a totem or something like that. But it can't quite match the power of Inner Light, but I think that it... And maybe to your point, Janeway could have had a little bit more there, maybe something to talk about that might have highlighted what she's going through, but I thought it still worked, really. Just don't have Janeway say too much.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I would like it more on rewatch. I think I was a little bit distracted by how enterprisey it was.
Yes, and it looks like a boring episode if you were just to watch it,
yeah.
thumbnails of it, yeah.
Yeah, so like I don't know if maybe I didn't give it the full benefit of the doubt because I was so predisposed given the setup for me to be like, all right, okay, they're trapped, and then she meets somebody and they got to get them back. But yeah, sure, whatever.
She's going to use the Don Quixote character to break in and things like that. Yeah. I just think that I don't think Enterprise ever had a centrally interesting story like this. It was mostly...
No, I would agree.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. I think he's a really, really good character. I guess I just wish there was a little bit more.
Do you need more about the Mokra? Do you want more about him?
No.
Yeah.
I think I need more from Janeway.
Okay.
Because she does lie to him and stuff, but like I don't know. I just wasn't. I never really felt like she was sacrificing anything or really pulling the wool over his eyes in a way that made me feel like she was doing something awful.
Yeah. I don't think the episode stresses that either. I don't think it plays her as a sort of villain.
Right, and I that's clearly not what it's about. But I don't know. I was just looking for something more from their team up. I think
it's tough because I think if Janeway takes a more aggressive stance towards him as a sort of like user of this character, it becomes more of it has to become a kind of commentary on like that exploitation, which I think it's trying to avoid. Like it's mostly just talking about suffering under like an unjust government, really. Like it's like being wronged by people who are in power and being greatly wronged by them and being like personally upset with yourself that you didn't do enough to stand up when you could have done something.
Sure.
So I think that anything Janeway adds to it is somewhat of a distraction there, unfortunately, but that does mean that she has to just kind of tag along with this character for a long time. And just a real tangent. The reason I like this performance so much is that I feel like this is the kind of character. I think what's this guy's name? Joel Grey?
Yeah.
I think if this was your run-of-the-mill guest star in Star Trek, this episode would be a 2 for me. Like, so much is riding on this guy and this performance. And what I think that Joel Grey does well is that he takes what could have easily been an incredibly obnoxious performance and never makes it obnoxious to me.
Yeah.
I never hated this guy, which was important. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. He has... he plays it as, he knows where the line is where he can be loopy without it coming off as try hard,
Yes.
Like he feels pretty honest the way that he's acting this.
Yeah. He switches back and forth between the two emotions quickly enough too that it never grates on you that he's the goofball character a lot of the time.
Right. Yeah. And even the scene where he plays an idiot, like he doesn't really ham it up. He kind of
it's not a court jester type appearance.
Yeah,
juggling,
he gets goofy, but he doesn't really just go nuts with it.
Yes,
just enough to be distracting to everybody and stuff. And I actually did really like. So one of the places where I was expecting a different. Or I should say the reaction that I got from Janeway was not exactly what I was expecting, or maybe I was expecting to land a little bit more, was at the end of that sequence when he's saying he's looking for his hat, and then the guy takes an empty melon and puts the melon
on his head, yeah.
And everybody starts laughing and stuff, and they kind of cut back to Janeway who's reacting to this, and I was I was trying to figure out if her reaction worked. Like, is she seeing? Is she feeling bad for him because of how much of a joke people think he is?
She takes the melon off his head, though, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be my answer, I guess, because I think that's just a credit to the subtlety of it, is that she doesn't say anything, but she's the one that takes the melon off of his head.
Yeah. I guess I just wish, I was just thinking whether or not I would like this a little bit more if it was maybe Chakotay or even Torres who was in this position instead of Janeway, someone who was a Maquis, who has a little bit of pathos for this guy.
Torres makes sense, I think, because of her Tuvok story, which is that she's incredulous that this quiet resistance is actually something someone would consider.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, having her have a point of view that differs from this guy's point of view, I think would make the story a little bit more effective. I think that's just I think that's what the problem is for me, is that Janeway, there's no real, I don't get a sense of what point of view Janeway has that this guy is a counterpoint to, that she learns something from him through this experience with him. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's fair. Yeah, it's I would agree that I don't think there's a lesson for Janeway to be learned. I think it's just you meet someone that kind of leaves a lasting mark on you, I guess, is the way that it is. Like, and maybe that's why Inner Light is better, is because Picard through that learns everything that he has kind of given up over the course of his career. He lives that life and has it. And so when it's taken away from him, he knows what he's been missing out on. Janeway's not the same. Janeway's more that I met this kind of sweet guy who was a little bit delusional, but I'll remember him from here on out because of what he, like his story and things like that. So maybe not pitch perfect, but I thought it was effective enough there. And the other thing that's another credit to the script, I thought, is that I thought all the stuff that was happening on the ship kind of worked well to boost the action on the planet, which isn't always the case.
I was surprised. I was legitimately surprised when Neelix came back. They start on the ship and they're like, well, if we don't get this thing, we're dead in the water. And Neelix shows up and he's like, hey, I got it. And they go, all right, put it in. All right, it works. I was expecting that to be a much longer, drawn-out thing where they weren't, but yeah, they put it right in, and then it's just a matter of how do we get the crew back. Yeah, I thought that stuff worked pretty well. I liked Harry Kim coming up with the idea to change the polarity of the shield, whatever the shield thing is he comes up with.
Yes, yeah.
And then they immediately get fired upon. And he's like, whoa.
Not gonna work. Yeah, I thought that the rebooting the warp engines was, and like losing power was going to be the running plot line on Voyager for the entire episode, but it did not turn out that way. But I thought that they were pretty effective in just, they gave you a good enough reason as to why they couldn't do anything, but the sort of talking out the how are we going to do this worked out okay. It didn't really end in anything that was revolutionary in terms of Star Trek. They still just get down there and they save the day. But I thought it was I thought like the tone was right or something. Like they got the energy right, that I never felt like going back to the ship felt like just a waste of time to kill 5 minutes before we go back to the planet. It worked enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, they treat it like it's an issue, right? They treat it like it's an actual problem, and in doing so, they don't feel the need to involve every person in the cast in it. Yeah. So
Tom Paris gets the most to do he's had in weeks.
Yeah, a long time. Yep. But it's basically just those three. It's basically Chakotay, Harry, and Paris.
Yes.
And I think keeping it tight helps in that regard.
Yep.
And it doesn't. It's effective, but it doesn't intrude too much on the other stuff. Like I could go either way with it. I could say that maybe there's another version where the stuff on the ship gets more into the politics of what's going on because they're being fired upon and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, I don't really care. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
you got to get the crew back, and you're having problems with the ship, and people are firing at you. What else do you need?
Yeah, it's a lot of it would be a lot of Chakotay talking to that guy about things that don't seem relevant.
Yeah.
What's your deal?
Where I come from, everyone is free.
Yeah, right.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
We don't believe in that at all. We believe in ruthless authoritarianism. He's like, my God, not since Earth 1942 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, I'm not going to praise the Mokra or anything. They're just Daft Punk police officers who are functional in what they need to do.
You know who they reminded me of? Do you remember the NES game Narc?
Yeah, yep.
With the two guys in the leather jumpsuits and the motorcycle helmets going around shooting criminals? They reminded me of the guys from Narc.
Inspiration can come from anywhere. Yeah, they just they're definitely, they were the most Enterprise-y thing to me. It's like vaguely 55-year-old guy that I vaguely recognize from things as the leader wearing leather.
Right.
And he's going to look down at you from his like jowls and just sort of judge you and stuff like that. It's interesting.
He's got a belt strapped diagonally across his chest. He must be a big deal.
Yeah, that's a sign of a fighting culture, right? When you have when you have the sideways sash, that always means something.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know. I mean, in Star Trek, it certainly means things.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And so there's nothing really said about the Mokra, I don't think. Nothing really said about Tuvok and Torres.
I'm just happy this is kind of like the first one of these we've had on the show.
Of this kind of like prison break thing?
Yeah, because they were so prevalent on Enterprise.
Yeah. Maybe this would be a 5 if we hadn't seen Enterprise to this point.
I was just thinking that. I was like, well, I mean, this had such a veneer on it immediately for me because I know, some of the people from this go on to do Enterprise, and we've seen other episodes before where it's like, okay, this is a proto-Enterprise kind of thing. So I was just kind of like, yeah, this is going to be, whether it's this Mokra guy or it's what's his name? The name of the guy from Quantum Leap, the other guy from Quantum Leap.
Oh,
Dean something.
Dean Kane? Is it Kane?
No. Nope. That's
Stockwell,
Superman.
right? Something like that.
Dean Stockwell. Yes.
Yeah.
It's it's like, oh yeah, authoritarian leader. You don't understand. We need to keep control. Blah blah. But luckily, like you said, they didn't really get into a lot of that.
No.
So that does it does you get a lot out of just the archetypal imagery. What's identifiable imagery of authoritarian government, resistance fighters.
Yeah.
You don't really need that much especially if the point of your story is the story of this man and his history with pain and loss and feelings of cowardice and guilt.
Yeah.
Who cares what the politics of the story are? You just need it's Star Wars. It's A New Hope and Star Wars. Doesn't matter. Empire bad, Rebels good.
Yeah.
Tell your story.
Yeah. They wear black leather just so you understand what the situation is. Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been more Enterprise-y if Chakotay had been talking to that guy about things. Like what Enterprise did was Archer felt the need to while he's handcuffed in the chair, he would talk to the guy about what is going on the planet, and it was just awful.
Well, not to get too political about it, but it really does kind of show you the difference between a 90s Star Trek handling something like this,
yeah, sure,
and a post 9/11 Star Trek handling something like this, where at the time the view of American politics was a little bit more, we must spread democracy across the globe and crush everybody who doesn't follow it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that what the different things that they focus on given the time when the episodes come out. And I'm sure people are saying, oh well, the one with Dean Stockwell came out before 9/11. It's like, well, what I'm saying is the producers knew it was going to happen.
They were the ones that knocked down that tower. Yeah, I think that's the. I think that's fair. Dilithium
crystals can't melt steel beams, Wes.
Well, it was the Enterprise never really had anything interesting to say about
that's the thing. Like, it's the fallback, right? It's the fallback is just arguing about why authoritarianism is bad because you yourself don't really have anything interesting to say.
Right. So I think that's what makes this Voyager episode work a little better is that it doesn't. You're not stuck with the specter of like 9/11 around this one where you're like,
Sure,
what are they saying about this?
Yeah.
Like, this is very confusing. Where Enterprise always had
which
that.
one is supposed to be the Taliban in this episode?
I can't tell. Just wearing their blacks. Yeah, I think that's the big deal.
Yeah, I think it's probably it's a little more ham-fisted than Deep Space Nine, but it's probably closer to Deep Space Nine than it is
this
in
episode,
the story that ultimately the story that they are telling is probably closer to Deep Space Nine, but unfortunately the trappings of it feel more like Enterprise.
That's fair. I think that's a happy medium to meet with them. Where I do feel like this had an understanding of guest star characters that I think only DS9 really did all the time fairly effectively, but it is stuck in the prison break weirdness of Enterprise, which is a downer for it. But anyway, I guess we're done.
It does. That's so interesting, isn't it? Like having an understanding of guest stars, right? It seems like, oh yeah, well, some famous person in the episode, or let's get more people to watch. It's like, well, yeah, okay, to a point, but also, you got to think about it. Like when you have a character where you really need a heavy hitter, to knock it out of the park. Like compare this. Not that Joel Grey is like. People don't have posters of him up in their bedrooms. Maybe they do. I don't know. But like Joel Grey is a fantastic actor that they got to play this character because they really needed someone to thread the needle on it. Versus when Rene Auberjonois shows up on Enterprise and he's just kind of like there because it's Odo. That's fun.
Right. Hey guys, just here to cash a paycheck. Hold nothing against him, but it didn't. Yeah, it's not.
Although. The one that he's in is kind of like they did need somebody to kind of bring the pathos across, though, didn't they? Isn't that the one where like everybody's fake or something?
Yeah, everyone's a hologram of his to protect his daughter or something. But I didn't think that I don't think he's actually that memorable of a guest appearance in it.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree.
It might just have been Enterprise, but he's not that fantastic. I mean, it's the I think that this episode is to compare it to another better episode, but it's like if Duet doesn't have Harris Yulin in it, and you just have like a C- guy off the street, you're like, ooh, boy, this episode is not firing really.
Yes, that's a much better example. Yeah.
So that's it. We'll not take a break. We're just going to say thank you to listening. Thank you to everybody for listening to the show. You can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File if you want to support the show. A couple $1 a month, you get extra podcasts. You get to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes, all that stuff. And now, Clay, we're going to go to patron comments, which maybe these which are in line with you. There's only 9 of them, which is a very low amount for these Voyager ones. It might be the lowest we've had so far, so we'll get through them quickly. Let me just pull up your little Discord bubble.
We got to start saying some controversial shit so we get people writing into us.
I know. But it's a balancing act because then my jaw is tired by the end of these podcasts because I've been talking for.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get much more controversial than my claim that the producers of Enterprise knew that 9/11 was going to happen. So,
and did nothing. You did nothing, Brandon.
Just stood there and watched.
This is Kyle Barat, loves TikTok.
Resistance. I don't like this episode, and I'm surprised at the positive reviews I see for it online. Yes, the guest star is good in the second half, despite the obvious twists, but for the first half, I find him insufferable, doing very crazy person theater acting, and him distracting the guards is possibly the cringiest 30 seconds of Star Trek ever. I know we're supposed to pity him, but not to the extent where I want to dash his brains out with a rock to put him out of his misery. He also looks exactly like Robert Durst. Plus, the ship is suddenly in dire straits for some reason, and the generic militaristic middle-aged white guy aliens and the prison subplot have big Enterprise energy. 2 out of 5. We don't want to be too hard on Kyle because I'm sure he's in mourning.
That's true. He might have been driven to whatever he's done here by the recent news. Yeah, it's true. Although my I mean, obviously it hits American. That news hits Americans. Fine. It's weird because it's like it's not a dancing on the grave thing. But my father's British. He doesn't particularly care about the monarchy. But even he was like, well, she's been there since I was born. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
like I kind of get it, I guess, but it's weird to.
Now, but like you flip that to someone from Ireland who's like, she's been here since I was fucking born.
Yeah, it's tough because you have to. She as a person. Did Kyle want to listen to Americans talk about the problem with the British monarchy? As a person, from what I've gleaned from The Crown, she's well. The problem for Elizabeth or any of the monarchs is that they are an institution and a person at the same time, right?
Sure.
So you can feel bad for the person while still thinking that the institution is kind of silly.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the way to go. Anyway.
Yeah.
Taxel Bear says, Resistance, not a bad idea for the episode, but the aliens, their cities, their society, and everything feels generic and forgettable, and I couldn't get myself to care about them at all. I had, in fact, forgotten this episode until just now.
You're welcome.
What can I say except you're welcome? This is Clef with Janeway plays is the first line.
Janeway plays a Dulcinea role for an old Don Quixote soul. Russ continues to impress, and Joel Grey shines as the guest. I just wish that the plot felt more whole. 4 episodes of Kim stuck delivering technobabble out of 5.
Mm-hmm. Patrick Seba with the next one says, the MC seems drunk in delusional way. Janeway she cared, though he may be cray-cray. Anything goes with guest stars, so his chest it got charred. But life, yes, my friends, is one great cabaret. 2 unused Fosse costumes left in Berman's dusty office out of 5.
You ever watch a Bob Fosse directed movie?
No, I don't think so.
Cabaret. So he also did All That Jazz.
Yep.
He only did a handful of movies. Like more well known as a choreographer, obviously. But he directed a few movies. All That Jazz is kind of amazing. Mm-hmm. It's like a pseudo autobiographical story about Roy Scheider basically playing Bob Fosse as he's kind of dealing with the fact that he's dying of lung cancer.
Yep.
And it's like really surreal and has a lot of really weird sort of like surrealist dance sequences and stuff. I watched it when I was years ago when I was kind of digging into the 70s filmmakers and stuff, and it was I was really surprised at how much I liked it.
Interesting. All That Jazz.
Yeah.
I'll give it a whirl. This is Aaron Million.
Resistance. This is such a generic and predictable plot that this story could easily take place in any one of the series and the outcome would essentially be the same. Crew member, in this case Janeway, gets into trouble on an undercover mission and ends up developing a bond with a local. The acting is good here, though, despite the stock militaristic aliens and their world. Once again, a not bad but definitely not memorable or great Voyager episode. 3 generic alien worlds out of 5.
Here's my pushback against what I agree is an incredibly generic alien world, right? And maybe there's probably pushback to my idea here, but the alien world in Inner Light is as generic and pointless as you can get, you know?
Sure.
Like it's ultimately, I don't think that that's the problem, and maybe that's not what people are saying, and that they think the episode itself is kind of boring, which I can't push back against that. But I think that when the idea is strong enough, and I think that this episode, it is strong enough, I think you can get away with that genericness just because it's not super important, I guess. That's my only thoughts about that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The episode might not do a good enough job capturing your opinion outside of that.
Yeah. I think, honestly, maybe it's just a presentation thing because it is such just guys wearing black and big black helmets. It's just it feels generic. Like in Inner Light, it is definitely generic, but there is more
novelty.
There's a little novelty, and they do kind of give you some more of the world, I think.
Yeah.
So I can see why just seeing this one as it's just bad guys in black leather who are it sounds like the name of a Judas Priest album.
Yeah.
Who are just iron fisting this also a Judas Priest album. Ruling this place with an iron fist. It's like, yeah, okay, it was seen it before, so it just kind of like I can see why people are pushing back against it.
Yeah. Enough just generic aliens just asking everybody if they're breaking the law. It's all that we've got at this point.
And you know what? they got another thing coming. I once wrote a paper in college. I went to art school, so nobody cared. I wrote a paper. Well, when I was writing my papers, my goal was to insert as many song lyrics as I could into said paper. And I once wrote a paper where I think I got almost the entirety of, I can't remember which song. I definitely a Judas Priest song. I actually did write a paper that I titled Separate Ways, Worlds Apart. And I'm pretty sure I got most of the first verse of that song into the paper.
For you. Jaron Hatch says, Resistance, it just goes to show you what great actors can do with average material. The performances by Kate Mulgrew and Joel Grey are this episode. In fact, if UPN had canceled Voyager and replaced it with the Kate Mulgrew and Joel Grey Dramatic Showcase Variety Hour, a show where Kate and Joel act out substandard writing submissions from the viewers to see if they can elevate the material, I can tell you right now, I would have watched that more religiously than I did Voyager. 3 security guards bamboozled by imaginary hat routines out of 5.
I did think she was really good in this. I liked her a lot.
Yeah. I have real trouble with Janeway playing sexy hooker.
I was just gonna say that scene felt more like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, seems like it's like my mother doing it. I don't know
Bugs-
how old Mulgrew is, but she just has older
She can't
energy.
be that old. Yeah, she's got to be like in her. She's probably younger than I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also was distracting because the guy she's seducing is that guy who shows up in everything playing a military guy.
Yeah, he's in.
He was on 24 for a long time.
He's in The Americans, I think, is the most recent.
Yeah.
He's like the FBI agent in The Americans.
I think he's in Independence Day, I think. Yeah. Always in a military uniform.
It reminded me, it was kind of like bringing me back Arrested Development flashback. She's like, it's darker over here. Let's go. There's light coming in from under the door. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't, it was a very Bugs Bunny routine. I just don't, it's nothing against Mulgrew, but I don't think she sells sexy particularly well. It's just not her forte. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's this? This is you. This is Matt Ross with Resistance.
Resistance. This had some sweet, if not cliche, moments with the old man. I do like that Chief Baddie has a very calming and malevolent voice. What's interesting is that this is the 3rd time the crew is told that they have a bad rep in the area. I did also notice that.
Yeah.
It does bring to question how far they've actually flown.
Yes. Word travels.
Which you would think make them more on the run. However, I cannot get out of my head the bizarre nose ridges and have you seen my hat and the scooped out honeydew melon. Odd pacing, and I still don't get why the guards in a jail retreated and didn't call for backup, and why Janeway wasn't more suspicious of her contact, who seemed to set her up earlier. 3 black boots out of 5. Yeah, she really does. She really gave that guy the benefit of the doubt when she ran into him in prison. She's like, get out of here, you scamp.
Yep. Funny running into you here.
Yeah. So I think the thing with the guards though is like, I've talked about this idea of like the your narrative cone of vision kind of idea of like you keep your story within a certain parameters of information that's necessary, because if you widen it out, then you just start asking questions, right? And like with a story like this guy, for all intents and purposes, is the highest member of this government that we know of.
Correct, yeah.
So by killing this guy, we don't know if he's just the warden of the prison, if he's like a general, if this is the president or something.
Right. How the morale is generally in the forces before this had happened. Yeah.
So like, yes, having the guards run away, they probably should. You would assume that there's a larger power structure involved that would stop them from getting away with killing a high-ranking official or whatever. But for the purposes of this story, in the circle of the story that they're telling, he may as well be the president,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, my issue with that ending is that it's the strings are pulled to enable what has to happen, and they couldn't come up with a smoother way to get all of that to work out.
Yeah.
Changeling says, this episode defines the word skippable. All the emotional stuff hinges on a character and performance from a guest actor that, well, quite frankly, sucks. You can see he's trying with
wow.
the over-the-top and big acting choices. I do not know who this guy is. He's Joel Grey, motherfucker, but I'll guess he's mostly a stage actor. Did some Shakespeare, maybe something off Broadway, but I felt like Wayne from Wayne's World
Like
2.
a fucking idiot.
The gutter that is off Broadway. I know it is a small part, but I think we can do better than this. One dry hand job from a prostitute Janeway out of 5.
Yeah. Haven't you ever heard of Jennifer Grey from a little movie called A Dirty Dancing? Well, it's her brother. Possibly 5. No, I think it's her brother. Yeah, I think it's her brother.
Oh, is it really?
I think so, yeah.
Interesting. Royo says, final comment. Oh, I'll send this to you because this is the final comment. Copy and paste. This is Royo.
Resistance. Having rewatched this after the Enterprise coverage, this episode has the incredible misfortune of coming across like a generic Enterprise episode. Repressive society imprisons some of the senior staff, and the crew has to break them out. They must have done this half a dozen times during Enterprise's run. At least Archer isn't stuffing his face into Paul's boobs here. Close. But luckily the corner that they go into is dark. Even though a crazy hobo has kidnapped Janeway, at least the show still has some dignity left by not having Kate Mulgrew degrade herself on camera. Again, they find a dark corner for that. 2 out of 5.
And this is standard definition, so you're not seeing anything in that dark alleyway. Thanks, everybody, for leaving your thoughts about this episode called Resistance. The patrons were more in line with you, Clay. But what are you going to give this one?
I'm going to give it a 3.
All right.
I feel like I'm being a coward by saying that because I didn't love it. So I feel like in my heart it's a 2, but I think Joel Grey is enough for me to give it a 3.
I'm going to give it a 4. I think it's the best episode of the season, easily, in my opinion, there. I liked this one, all the reasons I mentioned before. I think it's emotionally affecting. It got a little bit dusty for me when that guy was talking about his story, and then when Janeway told him the final lie before he passed away. I thought that was all very good. It definitely has problems, but compared to where we've come from, and my ratings aren't relative, but I would. This is the first episode of this season that I would say someone might as well watch because I think it's got some effective pieces to it. A 4 for me, a 3 for Clay. Thanks everybody for listening. Patreon.com/The Pensky File. If you want to support the show, a couple bucks there, you get extra stuff, all the podcasts, everything you could ever want at Patreon.com/The Pensky File. Clay, do you have anything you want to say before we're done?
I want to say I am happy it is Oktoberfest season.
Yes.
Because all my favorite beers are out now. The Martzen beers, love them. I'm sad that they only exist for once a year, like Brigadoon or something.
You've got your pumpkin spice mix and everything.
No, I don't care about that. I don't care about that shit. No, I want the German stuff, the Martzens and the Fest beers. That's what I'm interested in. Anything that has blue and white checkers on the can, sign me up. Amanda and I are still doing second string of Stephen King. We actually this week we had a bit of a last minute Audible change on our regular episode of Rotten Horror Picture Show because we decided to do another hour on Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
So it's the most recent episode will have been Amanda and I talking specifically about Twin Peaks: The Return. Very free form, not a lot of structure to it. So enjoy.
Just like the show itself or the movie. What is Return? Is Return the series?
Yeah. It's the third season that came out 5 years ago at this point, which is crazy.
That's surprising. Yeah, I don't have any thoughts. I tried to watch the first couple episodes of Twin Peaks and it never sucked me in. So you guys can listen to Clay and Amanda talk about it because it sucked them in big time. And now they've got multiple episodes coming. The podcast is just going to turn into a Twin Peaks podcast at this point.
Wait, you never know. It might end up going that way.
We'll rebrand it. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. We'll be back next week with Prototype. I think there's an interesting looking little robot face in the thumbnail for that one. So
I saw that.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that one.
That could really go either way, I think.
Yeah. It does have that kind of a face.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. We will see you next week.
Neelix, teach me to love.